Welcome back to another Tech Talk video, guys. This one, I'm going to do my best to make it short, especially since my memory card is running out of space and I don't have another one. So this one, we're going to jump right into it. I'm pretty sure I haven't talked about this yet, but we're going to touch on the concept of APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interface. And this one, I thought I had the concept down until not recently. I want to say closer to 2 years ago. I was interviewing for implementation engineer role, and I didn't get the job. And it was a more technical role. And SQL, for those who know SQL, primarily the MySQL syntax, was going to be pretty important to the job. So some of the questions that they asked were technical. Actually, no, I think this might have been a technical analyst role now that I think about it, because I was doing two different interviews at the same time. One was an implementation engineer, which I didn't get, and then this one was the technical analyst role for a different contracting company. I'm not going to say who. Yeah, that was the one. And one of the interviews, there was like a group interview or a panel interview. It was two other analysts who had been doing that type of work for a bit. And then there was my main interviewer who was above them. And he asked me, one of the interview questions was, do you know what an API is? And I stuttered and I was like, slow down. I told him I would have to circle back to that question because I thought I knew what it was off the top of my head, but I blinked. And then I circled back around and answered it. And I said that APIs basically allow two apps to communicate. That's basically it. And that's all I said. As someone that is trying to become more well versed in the whole tech universe and these different concepts, and also, potentially help folks who are studying this stuff, or, you do it and you don't understand what it means. You don't know why, if you look at certain job descriptions on Indeed or LinkedIn or anything else, they say that you having the ability to build an API is going to be pivotal to jobs, because I'm seeing that more and more. So it's like, what is an API really? And what does this look like? What's a simplified way to, paint this picture? And the simplest comparison that I came up with is a few of them, but basically portals is the whole gist. So I came up with, there's a Sankaimon comparison you can make with Bleach. You can use like Angstrom Levy's powers from Invincible. You can use like the breaches from Vibe or Cisco from the CW Flash series. The Space Infinity Gem from Marvel Comics and the MCU, where they're called the Infinity Stones, but in the comics, they're actually supposed to be Infinity Gems. The whole gist of it is an API is essentially a portal that does allow different apps and platforms to communicate and share data and information back and forth without you having to actually get into that organization's data and code and stuff, and therefore it becomes a security risk. The same way, if you have a portal, or rather a front door, another super simple example, it's like just a door. Like if you have a house, a townhouse, whatever, and someone comes and knocks on your door to get something that you have, and you close the door, go back and get it, and you bring it back to them. That is an example of a one-way API system. The endpoint is the door. You only need a door or an endpoint if there's a chance that someone will come knocking to get something from you. If you are someone that more times than not, people aren't going to be asking you for stuff, you're not going to have an endpoint. You're not going to have an API endpoint. But if you have a two-way API connection, then that's basically like being neighbors. That's like when your neighbor comes to you, knocks on your door, hey, you got some sugar? And you go ahead, grab it, and you bring it to them in a bag, in a cup, or something like that. Then that's when it's one way, in that they asked you for something, you gave it to them without letting them in your house, and they went back to their house, and that was that. Then when you need something, you get out your door, you go to your neighbor, knock on their door, you made a call. That's what's called an API call. When you knock on the door, or when you make an API request, same thing. That's when you knock on the door, and then you tell them what you're looking for. They won't let you in the house. They'll go and get what you need, and then they bring it back, and you go back, and the whole thing just recycles and repeats. That is the basic concept of an API calls, and the different types. There are multiple types of APIs. You have REST APIs, SOAP APIs. I know there's JSON. I think JSON APIs are a thing as well, which follows more on access control and authorization, authentication, I believe, is where that's more prominent. The main things I want to touch on are just the basic definition of an API, what that is, and a one directional API and what that looks like or how you can imagine it, and a two-way API system and how you can imagine that as well. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick because that's still something that after all this time, I don't have to build APIs. I don't have to do any coding for my job. And but the thing is with this program, and I'll most likely post my industrial and systems engineering video first, which could kind of lead into this. But for the new master's program that I'm going into, if my department chair and if my advisor allows me, then I may be able, even though I'm an online student, I may be able to do a project for this engineering program. And if I focus on automation, which is one subject that I can choose, there's a bunch of other stuff. There can be like supply chain and logistics and other stuff. But the department chair, when I spoke to him yesterday, he did mention like take a problem from your actual job. And if you use automation as the subject of your project, that would be great because automation is the name of the game right now. And so if I were to stick with automation, APIs is a key concept for that. And that just had me thinking like, okay, I need to actually learn this and get a good understanding because before, me not knowing that before may have cost me a job, which I'm happy with the job I have now for sure. But it may have cost me a job back then. But also, depending on where my future goes, me learning this and understanding it may be pretty important. So, just wanted to touch on that real quick. That is what an API is. It's basically a portal. Again, think of the Senkaimon from Bleach, Ancient Levy's portal powers, Cisco from the Flash's portal or breach powers, stuff like that. And you don't think of it like a tunnel. I want to make that very clear. Don't think of APIs as a tunnel. The whole point of APIs is to function basically like a wormhole. It folds space on itself so that you don't have to take the long way around. You just knock on someone's door and say, hey, I need this, throw it through the portal. They throw it through the portal or hand it to you and you're like, cool, appreciate you. Close the portal. Oh, I forget the guy's name, the space magic user from Black Clover, the older brother who almost got done in by his younger brother. That's another example. Finral, I think the guy's name is Finral. Yeah, he's another example of that as well. But yeah, just to simplify that concept for anyone who needed it, and of course for myself. So hope that was helpful. Yeah, guys, have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever? Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.